Welcome to Maritime SoftwareHub, the People Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Gina Panayiotou, who is an ESG specialist, so focusing on the environmental, social and governance issues, in particular in the maritime space. So we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about how technology is advancing ESG policies, processes and systems within the maritime arena. So thank you again for tuning in. Enjoy the show and let's catch up soon. Hi Gina, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Callum, it's absolute a pleasure to be here.
Well, you're very welcome. I know we've been speaking for quite a few years now. I think I don't know if it goes back to my Clarkson's days, but I'm really I've enjoyed our previous dialogue and obviously all the insights you've shared over the years in your different kind of projects and things. So welcome. Today we're going to focus the conversation around ESG kind of procedures and policies and how technology can perhaps possibly help kind of drive that forward in the shipping space. So thank you for coming on board. And if you don't mind to start with, if you can give us a quick overview of your background, who you are, and we can then dive into some questions.
Yeah, sure. I think actually we met when you were just launching this, so it's very nice to see the progress, and I'm really, really excited about this chat today. About me, so I'm a lawyer. I'm a maritime lawyer by academic background. I kind of ended up in this industry like most of us by coincidence. I've worked most of my careers with ship owners. I think I've been in the industry now for almost 11 years, sorry. It was kind of a natural transition into ESG, as I've always been more on the environmental policy side and quite active with WISTA, as you may know. So the two kind of married each other and gave it more purpose. I then set up my own consultancy doing ESG for a few years, and I'm currently the ESG manager at West P&I Club, where I lead their ESG strategy and represent them on the IG group on sustainability matters.
Great, no, fantastic, and also congratulations. I saw you've been nominated for the Sea Trade Maritime's 20 under 40.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that was quite a surprise, but thank you very much.
No, well, what does that involve? What sort of is that relate to?
So the Sea Trade Maritime list, the 20 under 40 is a list of 20 individuals, young professionals in the industry. I'm not sure how young I fall in that scale, but I'd accept it with pleasure. That
Yeah.
are making progress, making waves, or doing something different in the industry, and really, helping it move towards a sustainable future, and are quite active in different elements of the industry. It's announced every couple of years by Sea Trade. This year, it was the awards were held in the Middle East, and it's just, I think, a great opportunity to showcase those young individuals and the next, I guess, leaders of this industry.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely, I'll sort of follow it closely, and I can see you obviously working on. Is it the World Ocean Council and Oceans Arena that they kind of ongoing projects that you look after?
So the World Ocean Council is more of a voluntary activity where I work with them as an associate, as we're quite so as this there's a shift and developing of how the oceans are being used by the shipping industry, and generally a new legislation like obviously the High Seas Treaty and different elements like that. We're looking at how we can bring together individuals from the sector, from the private and government sector, to improve policy and make it, I guess, more relatable to where the world is going and what we need to combat these climate issues.
Interesting. Okay, great. All right. Well, let's dive into kind of our main discussion today. So maybe if you can, to start with, give us a quick overview of what ESG is, what it means to you in your interpretation, and then we can look at kind of relating it to shipping.
In my interpretation, I think that ESG is the greatest opportunity this industry has been given to shine. So to break it down a bit for those who may not be so familiar with it, ESG is environmental, social, and governance. That covers and is aligned with the sustainability development goals of the United Nations. So the environmental aspect obviously is quite self-descriptive. It has to have do with climate change, but things also like the health of our oceans. Then on the social element, a big part of that is, of course, gender equality, but then we've got the wider diversity issues. And when it comes to maritime crew welfare is also top on the agenda. And one of the three core pillars at West that we're focusing on, actually. And then the governance side is basically all the reporting standards, what you have to be compliant with, the transparency kind of initiatives of that sector. And all of those three tied together in a way, because obviously to be doing what's good for the environment, you need innovation. To innovate, you need talent. So that touches upon the social element. And then obviously for that talent to be able to create their ideas, they need good governance structures in place.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think all three of those key kind of pillars, we're seeing a whole range of maritime technology kind of businesses focus on either all of them or certainly kind of individual kind of key, either environmental, social, or the government side. So let's have a look at shipping. So if we talk about the role of technology, how do you see it as helping, kind of aiding towards kind of businesses' ESG policies and procedures?
Yeah, I'm actually going to say that it's in my top three of how you implement a successful ESG strategy. I mean, first, obviously, you need the leadership and the board buy-in. That's very important. Secondly, you need a very realistic strategy that's quite focused on your business values. And then you need tech in all three elements of that, because I mentioned a bit earlier as we broke down the pillars, tech is very much a big part of making existing fleets more efficient, because we need to remember we're not just talking about the fleets that we're building in the future. There's a vessel has a lifespan of minimum 35, 40 years, right? And there's going to be a lot of ships that need to become more efficient. The way to do that is through tech platforms, through tech solutions that will facilitate things like just-in-time arrivals at port, better biofiling processes, or, for example, complementing your energy sources, which say will with things like wind propulsion, for example. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. And
Yeah.
then on the social aspect of it, as I mentioned, there's a lot of focus in shipping on the crew welfare. A big part of that is connectivity. Tech falls right into
Mhm.
that. But beyond that, there's a lot of interesting startups which are popping up. And I had the opportunity to work with one, for example, Care4C, as an advisor, where they do monitoring of sleep pattern data. So that gives you a very accurate picture of the welfare of your seafarers, which may sometimes, it's not translated to show the difficulties that they're going through. So tech, has a very important role in assessing data patterns where it has to do with climate or the social element. And then, of course, when we come down to governance, which I think is quite a big challenge in the industry, there's all these reporting standards that are flying around, and you need to make sure your data is accurate. You need to make sure, there's no duplicate entries. A lot of companies struggle with that at the moment. So that's another element where you need a really good tech structure internally and external providers, software providers, where you can accurately report, and ideally it's not so time consuming for you to do it, manually, or have to be monitoring what do I need to comply with CII, or what do I need to comply with the Poseidon
Mhm.
principles. So tech is everywhere, basically.
Yeah, I think we're seeing from our side the different, if we break it down, so the different kind of businesses that we kind of either work with or maybe we've had on the show before. If you look on the environmental side, you've got a whole range of them. Obviously, either vessel performance focused solutions, as you say, like carbon monitoring, kind of SaaS platforms that are very focused on monitoring engine emissions, that type of thing. So we're seeing a whole lot. And then on the social side, there's been some interesting companies that we've actually spoken to very recently. Companies like Signal, Tiller, who we just had on the podcast last week, and they're really kind of trying to transform that kind of crew onboarding, offboarding sort of process, as well as understanding kind of the behavioural sort of science behind the crew welfare and their patterns of behaviour. Um, Lots of interesting companies doing that type of thing.
And another thing, actually, that I forgot to mention, and it is a project I'm kind of involved with again as an advisor. So a big issue with crew welfare is like you can't really measure it. How do you measure, where you're improving? And that's a big part when it comes for owners when it comes to reporting on the standards. So there's this company I'm working with who are developing an app that uh, basically seafarers can be the end user, and it allows you to create some metrics on how you're improving, what more needs to be done. So these are also very interesting aspects and very creative elements of how tech is falling in to help you report better and create a better ESG strategy and implement it better.
Yeah. And do you think we see a lot of kind of maritime software companies now that also have like compliance solutions and regularity kind of and sanctions kind of modules to keep people advised and on track. Are the classification societies playing a big part in that governance piece? Are you seeing, or is it less so?
Classifications have always had a big part to play in the governance of things. I think that what we should say here, that definitely, the responsible person who will look into it, who will issue the relevant certificates, compliance with existing legislation. I would say though we are lagging behind when it comes to having those proper governance structures in place in respect to tech, and that's not just in maritime. I mean, we're seeing this big revolution with AI, right? And a couple of weeks ago in the UK, we had an AI safety summit, and I think the issue there is that, which applies to the shipping industry also. AI is developing so quickly, legislation isn't, the governance structure isn't. So you kind of, it's a wild beast. So how do you manage
Mm.
that? So I think we do have quite a way to go to put those proper governance structures in place, which then the classification societies and respective authorities will be able to properly implement and help support that development and evolution.
This might not link, but do kind of like a ship registry and kind of flags relate to kind of governments, or is it more perhaps not in their kind of jurisdiction? Is it more to do with, as you say, the classification societies and other businesses?
No, a lot of stakeholders are involved. Of course, it depends on the flag. So some are port state controlled flags, some are state flags, and some are the convenience flags of
Mhm.
convenience, as some call them. So it depends on what powers they have when it comes to governance in this respect. But yes, most flags would be involved with the issuance of certificates, with compliance, so there are quite a few stakeholders which would be involved in the process depending on jurisdiction.
Yes, I've never really reached out or spoken to too many kind of personnel from the flags themselves actually regarding their what they're doing in innovation and technology and stuff. That's something I might kind of try and pursue. We speak to a lot of classification societies and obviously the suppliers themselves, but that's something I think I'm going to try and dive a bit more into.
I think it
Okay,
would be
good.
an interesting aspect, yeah, because quite a few are now
Yeah,
really looking at green initiatives and how they're supporting that with owners. So it would be interesting.
yeah, good. And also the actual ports themselves, we're seeing lots of advancements, as you said before, kind of like berthing, like loading, discharging times and monitoring time. I guess sat idle, essentially, kind of wasting fuel and things. So,
Mhm.
um, okay, so for anybody kind of considering a role in your maybe not your type of position, but focused on the ESG space, any kind of advice for people getting into that arena? If it's is it a valuable career path that you find? Well, what do you kind of enjoy about it?
What I enjoy about it, I think for me, I'm very purpose driven when it comes to my career, and as I mentioned a bit earlier, it tied everything together. So I was very passionate about the environmental policy side of things, and also the social element, crew welfare, um, and gender equality. So it's a very purpose driven mission for me, and I do feel it's a fantastic opportunity for us as an industry to finally shine and correct that narrative that we're the industry that pollutes the ocean. We're not the industry that pollutes the ocean. We're the industry that's responsible for 90% of life as we know it. So it's a good opportunity for us to reset that narrative. On people considering a path or joining, obviously this is something that will be in high demand, and we're seeing new roles appearing from analysts to chief sustainability officers. I think the important part is a good understanding that it is a challenging thing. You're speaking a new language to a quite conservative industry, so you need to be prepared for that. Also having a very firm understanding of ESG is quite mainstream, so it applies to a lot of industry, but understanding how you're going to then translate it into the sector, whether it be
Mm.
maritime or other that you're using. Because one thing I need to say, and I feel like I see it happening a lot with ESG strategies, you can either do it, if you do it really well, it does give you that opportunity to stand out. But if it goes wrong, you've got then accusations like greenwashing and all these other considerations. So it's not a career that you can take lightly. It's a very big responsibility for companies, that you're bearing this great responsibility on how they're presenting themselves, the social license that they have to operate in the future. So it is something that people need to be aware of, but it is very interesting, and it's also an emerging field. So you've got the scope, I guess, to play and create.
Yeah, and I guess from your work and the kind of projects, are you ever kind of comparing and taking kind of I guess sort of examples and leads from other industries like aviation or automotive? Do they have quite advanced kind of steps in this place already?
Yeah, obviously, I think maritime industry is probably not the most advanced. So I always, as a person, try and go across industries and monitor and follow news that are more mainstream and will report on other industries. I mean, especially the investment, the bank sectors, they're quite big on it because they have to comply for governance issues. But then, yeah, also other industries like aviation, like even hospitality. So I do try and look at other industries and see what you can bring back and how you can adjust it to the shipping and maritime industry.
Interesting. No, great. Okay, and we haven't discussed this question before. I'm just sort of throwing it out there, by the way. What do you think, like going forward in the next kind of 3 to 5 years or so? How do you think it's going to change? Do you think more and more businesses are starting to kind of take note and adjust their kind of workforce to factor in these kind of key issues that need to be implemented?
Definitely. So, my personal perspective, I think with things like the new reporting standards, CSRD, that's coming in from the European Union, and how companies will have to be reporting on a more standardized approach. Um, I think the main shift we're going to see and different is that companies are not just going to be throwing it around as a buzzword and a tick box exercise. They're going to realize this is something we need to do. But it's also going to be helpful to see that return of investment, which now it's very difficult to translate and get through to boards because you can't really explain what will be the benefits. But if they can see in the long term that it is benefiting my business, it is setting me apart from competition, and it mitigates the risk of fines and other compliance issues there, or reputational damage even. And another big thing that I say, talent retention and attraction, because who's going to want to work for you if you're not
Mm.
purpose driven and you don't care about the planet? So I think that's a shift we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years. Definitely, companies from now just seeing it a bit as a tick box exercise to going into truly appreciating the value that ESG can bring to the organization as a whole and to the business.
Yeah, we recently had every now and then we apply for tenders to be kind of on the preferred supplier list for large organisations to recruit for them, and we just did a very a lengthy tender and got through it, and they had a large part all about ESG, all about
Mhm.
our policy, our procedures. So it really helped us look at our kind of processes and start to think differently about what we can do. So it's interesting if businesses are also vetting their suppliers based on their own kind of policies and kind of ideas around that. So I think that's really encouraging to see more and more kind of companies aiming to try and partner with people with similar values and things. So
They
it's
are
interesting.
because, sorry for they are because it's a part of the process. Now with this reporting standard, especially public listed companies, for example. But it goes beyond. If you want financing, you need to be going through these processes and have it a crucial part of your ESG strategy. Who am I working with? Are they aligned with what I'm doing? So you need this will be a requirement with most organizations that you need to work with going forward.
Yeah. Okay. And if somebody is interested in following this kind of career path and doing more projects, obviously you've come from a marine law background. Are there any other kind of typical avenues people might sort of go through to get to this sort of role or work on these sort of projects? Is it, you mentioned analysis and legal side, any kind of a bit more elaboration on that, or any other paths you could think of?
It depends really. So it's an interesting one because a lot of roles can fit into this, right? I mean, from risk management to data analysts. If you want to do ESG, what I strongly recommend is usually do something more mainstream to understand ESG and where it fits in. And there's a lot of even short courses that are quite good on that respect. Because I don't really think that we have a very advanced maritime ESG training course yet. So I say it depends where you want to sit in this role. Is it the ESG strategy part where then you need to be more on the business side and probably things like an MBA or understanding the business structure? Do you want to be on the analysis side where you're helping the process through gathering the data? So obviously you go into something more on data analysis. You could even be on the IT side and developing the systems for big organizations to gather that data, share that data, etc. So it really depends on what your passion is, I guess, and there's quite a few paths into this sector. For me, it was obviously environmental policy and law, but I think what I should have mentioned also earlier is that ESG isn't one thing. You can't just hand it. So up until now, a lot of organizations would either hand it to the legal department, hand it to the risk department, hand it even to the marketing department. It's a combination of all of this. So you can't just say this is the one path into ESG. I think if you've got a passion in something, you'll probably find a way into it.
Okay, and do you see some companies have like an ESG officer or ESG manager? Are there now different roles kind of breaking up all around the topic?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I'm probably the only titled ESG manager at the P&I club out of the 11 that are part of the IG group. Other clubs, of course, do have sustainability officers, or it's combined with something else that they already do. But I think we're seeing this increase, and you probably will also start seeing it from a recruiter side for roles like ESG analysts, for roles like chief sustainability officers, ESG managers, ESG directors. So there's a lot of that going around, especially in other industries, but I think it's increasingly becoming more common in the shipping sector, especially as the reporting standards are becoming more stringent.
Yeah, no, I agree. We are seeing a couple, not huge, not regularly. So it's definitely, I think, something that's going to grow, as you mentioned. Okay, cool. Well, anything else you'd like to kind of share? Any other words of wisdom about the subject before we wrap things up?
No, I think, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I truly feel it's such a huge opportunity for us as an industry to reset the narrative. It's an opportunity to truly embrace tech and make and create a better future. And something I think I always like to say, maybe why I'm so passionate about ESG. There's so much discussion about what the fuel of the future is, but the key to the industry's sustainability is talent. And we need to really be looking into how we're going to be attracting and retaining the best brains that can innovate for us and can really help take this industry forward and ensure its sustainability.
Yeah, and I guess that goes back, I guess, a little bit to the education piece from a younger age and exposure to the different opportunities out there. And we're seeing more. I mean, we obviously passionate about the digital shipping space, but we've attended universities and spoken at them and things, and walked them through different career opportunities within the digital shipping side, and touched upon the vessel performance and the other kind of environmental focused platforms. And when we talk to candidates about kind of opportunities that maybe aren't in a maritime, they're not in the maritime space, when they start to hear about, okay, this is working on these sort of environmentally sort of friendly, or trying to drive net zero by reducing some sort of emissions or something, so it sparks people's interest. And I think they start to think, okay, I'm actually doing hopefully going to work for someone that's kind of working towards something really positive. So it's getting that, advertising that, I think, a little bit more, and we try to do that obviously from our side, but I think businesses need to do it more as well. Cool. All right.
Definitely a chance to reset that narrative there and really shine some positive light on this industry.
No, sounds good. Okay, right. So I always ask people this, but obviously we've never met physically in person, so I'd love to learn a bit more about you, and in particular, any kind of particular hobbies or passions that you have that people may not know about.
Hobbies and passions that people wouldn't know about. I think one that probably people find a bit interesting is that I box a little bit. I don't do it
Oh,
professionally,
wow,
obviously,
cool.
but I do it more as a fitness part. But yeah, I've enjoyed very much learning how to box over the past year and a half. So that's something probably people don't know about me, or I don't know if they can tell, but
Excellent. Do you ever do sparring, or is it mainly kind of like circuits and in the gym type of thing?
it isn't sparring with other people, but with the trainer, yeah, we do some
Yeah.
sparring. But yeah, as I said, it's very early stages, so yeah. But other than that, pretty boring stuff that I do in my spare time, like reading on personal development or, catching a podcast of the Diary of the CEO. Yeah.
Oh, great. No, good. I have two children, and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they're very much into boxing at the moment. And stupidly, I bought them some like little plastic gloves and things, and I bought them like a blow up kind of punch bag for Christmas. So probably a terrible idea, but they're going through that phase at the moment.
I'll
Um,
tell you
so
what, which I hadn't expected. I'll say I started boxing more as a self defense to learn a bit about self defense. The focus and coordination that's required in this sport is something that really blew my mind away. I mean, you really need to be on the ball. It's incredible. So I think it helps so much, especially for children. I mean, I think you did very well.
yeah,
Yeah, let them do
yeah,
do that, because it really is incredible, the focus and coordination that you need to develop.
yeah, and definitely discipline and that type of thing. So hopefully, yeah, like as long as I don't hit other people and that sort of stuff, it's okay. But they're enjoying it. Okay, well, Gina, it's a pleasure to speak to you. If anybody would like to reach out to you, kind of if they have any questions or would like to kind of perhaps set up a call with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Gina Panayiotou, and if you DM me there, or my email address is probably also on the website, or should be on West's website. So I would say LinkedIn is probably better, because I monitor that like 24/7 probably. But yeah, I'd be happy to have a chat and discuss any of the things we've discussed today further.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, I'll put also a link to your details in the show notes. But thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all your knowledge in this particular area. And I'm sure our audience will too.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Callum. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Well, I definitely think I've learned a little bit more about the ESG space after that conversation. In particular, kind of the different role functions within ESG that perhaps are a bit more prominent maybe in other industries at the moment, but are likely to become more and more prevalent in the shipping space. So if someone's interested in that kind of career path and is obviously very focused and passionate about a particular area, please do reach out. It'd be great to have a conversation with you, and maybe down the line, or maybe even currently, some of our businesses and clients that we work with could well be interested in speaking to you. So thank you again, for joining the podcast, and speaking again soon.